I will admit that this bundle has me kind of feeling like a kid in a candy store, just because I've had so much fun putting the last two pieces together, and the way they came out was just amazing. And I hope you guys take a look at the other two items. But today, in this bundle, or not in this bundle, but in this video, we're gonna put together a really cool clock. Now, if you guys remember, we recently, within the last 6 months or so, released a bundle that had nothing but clocks in them, and you guys really loved those. So we thought, why not make one for Halloween? And I know from my time looking at vintage Halloween stuff, I've seen some really cool clocks that have been put together. So anyway, without further ado, let's just kind of get started here. And we're gonna get started by, of course, doing just some basic paper piecing, just to get everything kind of prepped for the ultimate step at the end where we kind of put everything in place. So let's start with our main focal piece here, the bat. I have, in my case, I've got this piece here. This is my pattern piece, so I'm going to glue this on top of that, and then we've got a nice overlay that's going to go over that. And we added that third one there for stability because his wings are somewhat large, and we don't want that getting warped. We want it to be as stiff as possible. And you know, this is kind of it's a bit of a large little area here, so do your best to quickly work your way through it and get that glue out to the edge. Not too close, but close enough to where it'll actually stick, and then just kind of fill it in here and there. That should do it. All right, so this is going on my solid colored layer, and I'm kind of looking at his butt here to help with the initial placement, and then looking at the wings. I'm gonna lift it up and kind of just nudge it and just push it around a little bit until I have it lined up nicely and precisely. And then after pushing all this down, if you find that you have little areas that maybe you could have added a little more glue to, I'll show you what you can do to kind of fix that up. Okay, let's take a look and see how we did. I'm just looking at it from a side view here, and you know, it came out pretty good. Let me just grab a scrap piece of paper. I've got a bow tie from the prototype of our little cat bag. I'm just gonna rip off a little piece of it and just put some glue nice and thin on one end of it. And I think I had a little area maybe on this side where maybe didn't get enough glue. I'm just gonna spread it open a little bit and just stick my piece of paper in there with that glue and just kind of paint it on the underside, and then just give it a push to get that to stick nicely. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now to finish off this piece, I've got this overlay piece. It's a really cool purple glitter, and I actually took a darker purple and inked the edges of that. So we're gonna get this glued into place. Let me move this little guy out of the way so I don't accidentally get glue on my project in places where I don't want it. Okay, and I'm just gonna start putting glue all over this thing here. Gotta work kind of quick when you're dealing with large areas like this, so try to be efficient. If you have a spray glue that you want to use, you're welcome to. I mentioned that in the video for the paper sculpture that I don't like using spray glue because I don't like going outside when I craft, for one, and I don't want to have to wear a mask inside because the few times that I did use that spray glue, it just made me feel horrible. It kind of gave me a headache. All right, so same thing here. I'm starting by lining up his butt and then looking at the wings, the little scalloped areas as I work my way down to the tip, and just kind of nudging things around until I have everything where I want it, and give it a nice push, get everything to stick nicely. And I think, just like we did with our paper sculpture, I'm gonna put this under my mat and let this dry nice and flat. I'm just gonna give it a nice even pressure. Okay, what do you say we do a little more paper piecing here? Now this is gonna be the top part of our bat. He's gonna be slightly pop dotted. So let's get glue on the solid color here. In my case, it's black. In your case, it might be something else. I'll get glue on him. There we go. And you want to center this right on this piece, in my case, purple. Make sure you have a nice even border going all the way around. And press that down. Okay, there we go. I'm going to pop that under my mat as well. Let that dry flat. All right, let's do another easy thing here. This is the little, I don't even know what you want to call it. We're going to put this on the back, on the door that opens up to the actual clock mechanism. And it's going to help us kind of open and close the door. Mostly open the door, so you have something to grab onto. So I'm just putting glue on, in this case, my white piece and gluing it to my black piece. And that's simple. Okay. And let's just put that underneath as well. Okay, so that leaves our little clock mechanism here. I already kind of started putting the layers down. This is our base. This is our main layer. This is the layer that goes on top of it. Okay, and sometimes, depending on your cutting machine, when it cuts circles, it cuts them oblong or a little weird. So you might want to kind of rotate it and see where and at what point it looks like it matches up the best. Because this, by design, is a perfect circle, but the way that some machines cut circles, it's just, this is what you're left with. So let's get some glue on this piece here and work that glue all the way out to the perimeter. Okay, there we go, like that. And get that glued down, just kind of using the hole in the center as my guide. And the rest of it should just snap into place as it did. And take your time. Make sure you get everything matched up nicely. Okay. Our next color here, this was originally a yellow. Whoops. What are you doing, mister? I took a nice green ink to it, and that looks nice. Let's get our glue on the back of this guy here. And just make sure you work some out to the perimeter nicely. Okay. And again, just using that center hole as a guide for placement. Try to get it as precise as you can. And the cool part about the center of this clock is it's going to make it really sturdy for the actual mechanism when it comes time to put it into place. Okay, now we kind of need to pay attention. Well, I guess we don't really need to, because it depends on how we put this down. But what you want to do is, you'll notice that there's numbers, and then there's also these little areas here, these little black areas behind in the copper section. Just make sure that the numbers are between those. Okay, do your best to get those nice and lined up, and let's get that in place. So I'm going pretty thin on the glue here, and then I'm going to just be very sparse with the glue when it comes to these numbers. And if you can just get a little bit here and there, that will do the trick. Okay, I'm barely squeezing my bottle right now. I'm letting out just the tiniest little bit, just so I can just graze the number ever so slightly with a little bit of glue. But then we'll focus our efforts here on the perimeter and make sure that we at least get that nice and glued down. Okay, if you feel that you might have too much in some areas, just kind of spread it thin with your finger. Okay, and also just make sure right now, it doesn't matter where you put the 12, just make sure that the numbers are in between those little areas that we talked about, the little squares. Okay, and then bam, just like that. Get that in place and push down. Okay, here we go. Got a lot of glue on my mat today. I've just been crafting all day since I woke up. Okay, that seems to be holding nicely. Okay, looks great so far. Next up is this piece here. Okay, so let's get that glued down. So this is a smaller circle. In my case, I've got it in a purple glitter. I'm just using that center hole as a guide to get that nice and aligned precisely so that that little ring around this is nice and symmetrical and even. Okay, here we go. And this is already getting really nice and thick and sturdy, which is great. It's exactly what we want. And finally, well, almost, not quite, we've got the star. And we want, now in this case, or at this point, we want the star, the top of the star to be pointing to the 12. The 12 is the X, XII. So get that nice and centered, kind of almost pointing at the middle I. Okay. I think if you kind of make a whoopsie there, it's not the end of the world. As long as you don't glue your clock on with the 12 at the bottom or on the side. I think that's going to be the time when you really need to pay attention, when we glue this to the actual structure. But this part, while it will ensure that it looks nicer and more symmetrical, if you mess this up, it's not a problem, but don't mess it up. You don't have to mess it up because I'm telling you not to mess it up. Okay, here we go. And then finally, we've got a little, in this case, like a copper little gear that we're gonna just put right on the center here just to kind of finish this off. So we've got a little copper on the outer ring and we've got a little bit of copper on the inner ring. And there is our clock face. Very cool. And now at this point, what we can do is, well, let's take a look here. We've got a few more little things to piece together. This is going to be the front of our clock. Okay, and we've got some pieces here. We'll start with this piece. And you can see the little cutouts here, 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 and here. Those are going to overlap with these little cutouts on this pattern piece. I also hit this with a nice red ink to give it a little bit of a aged / distressed sort of feel and look. It makes it look a little creepy as well, which is perfect for Halloween. I think this is Dracula's clock. Okay, so get your glue on this piece here. And again, I'd probably grab it by these little balls here and line that up as precisely as you can. There we go, there we go. It's funny because even though they're all connected, almost each little section seems to be independent. It has a little bit of give. But that looks good, just like that. Then we've got this piece here, and that, you want to make sure that the smaller little flourish is at the top, the larger one at the bottom. And we're going to get that glued into place. There are some cutouts there that will help you get that lined up nicely. Get your glue on there, and you can see that little middle cutout. It's like almost like a keyhole. So just get that aligned, and that should help you with not only the placement, but centering and the whole 9 yards. And I think I kind of put a little too much glue on there, but luckily it's a very busy pattern, and I'm not sure that you're going to see any splotches of glue. Okay, so there's that. Now we have a little chalice or an urn. It's It's not a chalice, I'm sorry. It is an urn. It's Dracula's urn. Now this piece is going to go right here where you have that same little pattern cut out. I need to get my head in here real quick. I apologize. There we go. So that gets glued on right there. You can see it shining there. Okay, and then we've got the top of the urn here. Throw a little bit of glue on there. And that is going to go right on top there. Try to get it centered. Just like that. And I didn't get it centered. Yeah, it's good. Okay, so that's that. As far as that goes, that's pretty much it. Now, you know what, I was going to say, let's put this on now. I'm going to probably wait to put this on last once the actual clock is fully constructed, just so that, well, I don't want to put this down just yet. So we've got this, the other pieces are all done. This is the panel that goes on the side. We're going to do a little bit of training to this. But what we can do right now is find these two pieces. Okay, now these two pieces, this is the front and back. There are two other pieces that look very similar to this, but they have tabs. Okay, these are kind of like the skeletons. The ones with the tabs, put those aside. We're going to use those to create the actual structure. These are going to go on after everything is said and done. But what we can do at this point is we can actually glue this on here. Okay, so that is going to be flush at the top like that, and then you're going to have a nice even border going around the rest of it. So we may as well get this done real quick. Just get that in place. Just make sure that you get that glue out to the very, very edge so that we don't have any little areas lifting up. Okay. And try to not get glue too close to these little cutouts here. We don't want it spewing through. And that looks good. Make sure that you get that glue up to the very top and the very bottom. And I'm just going to do a little extra love over here. Let me spread that out a little bit. Okay. All right, so again, using the hole as my guide and the top, because it is going to be flush with the top, go ahead and get that aligned. And let me see here. I can't really see it. It's not aligned. Now it's aligned. And don't worry if the hole is not perfect, because that's going to be covered up with the actual clock face. But do your best to get that as aligned as you can. And if you missed an area, you can always go back in and paint it using my little trick there. Okay, that looks good. I think that worked out nicely. Yep, that looks great. Okay, I'm going to pop this underneath my mat as well. Give that a little extra push while I'm not doing anything with it. And then we have this piece here. For this piece here, this is going to go like so. You want a nice even border all the way around it. We're using a little bit of a different pattern on the back than we are on the front. You're welcome to use whatever patterns you'd like. You can do the same pattern. You can use a different pattern. It's almost like with Halloween stuff, you can't go wrong because it is such it's a little bit of a strange holiday. And sometimes, I won't say the laws of design go out the window, but I do think you have a little more flexibility with patterns and colors and things of that nature. So don't be afraid to experiment with something. You might be pleasantly surprised. All right, so again, I'm just kind of holding this in place. Pardon my head for a second. I just want to make sure that I get a nice even border all the way around and that I have it positioned correctly. You want to kind of use the top here because it is flat as a guide for your initial placement. And then there you go. The rest of it should just fall into place and that looks perfect. Make that a nice push down. Got a little crazy with the cheese whiz over here. glue. Okay, and then we're going to finish this up. This is a little door that is going to give you access to the actual clock mechanism if you ever need to change out the battery or adjust it. Actually, you can adjust the time by just moving the arms up in front. You don't even need to touch anything in the back. I think you probably should use the back so you don't stress out the actual mechanism or break it somehow, but I think I've set the clock by just messing with the front of it instead of using that little dial on the back. Okay, so this piece here, of course, is going to go on right in the center. Just make sure you got it nice and centered with a nice even border all the way around. Give that a push. Okay, now I'm going to warn you early, but I will tell you again, make sure that well, I don't think there's anything that you can actually glue this to, so never mind that. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to stick this under my mat as well. Let that flatten out. Okay, got our clock face. Yeah, we're pretty much rocking and rolling here, guys. Let's begin by putting together the structure here. And this is the base that it goes on. These two bands are for, it's a little trim piece for the actual base. There's a little score mark on one side of it. You want to go ahead and fold it at that score mark and make sure that it's nice and even this way as you're folding it. Keep it nice and on top of itself. Okay, you can just leave that off to the side. This is a little decorative piece that's going to go on the top or bottom, whichever side you decide you want to put it on. And to construct this, let's start by simply folding everything at the score marks. Okay, and what we're going to do in essence is just put the bottom on. I'm going to close it up, and this is going to be our top since it's already kind of pretty much pristine and precise. This will be our bottom, but we still got to put it together, so let's do that. And I'm going to take this bottom part and just fold it back to kind of get it out of the way so I can get my hand in here a little bit easier. And I'm going to start with the assembly nearest to this part here. Let's get our glue on this triangular tab here and fold this in and push that tab up against the back there. Make sure that you have it nice and even and lined up, and just press and hold that for a few seconds while it sets. If you get a little bit of glue that squirts out, it's going to be okay because we're going to put a band around this thing, that decorative spiderweb band, so that will hide any little imperfections. So don't worry too much about that. Okay, now, I always like to hold this a little bit longer because it has this weight kind of pulling against it. So it could kind of help if you just do it like this and hold this to prevent it from pulling back. Now let's get our glue on the next little tab here. Okay, and just spread that out to the very edge. Bring that in, tuck it behind the wall on this side here. Just make contact and squeeze. I think that bottom piece is fine now. Make sure you get it nice and lined up. There we go. Okay. There we go. All right, moving on over to this side now. Let's get our glue on this tab. Like that. And just connect it. And give it a good squeeze. All right, final one here. Just throw some glue on that one. Might be it's not difficult, it's just not as easy as the other ones because everything's almost in place. So you might need to use that glue tip, the glue bottle tip, to kind of spread that glue around a little bit, and then align it and just squeeze it together. Okay, so we're actually less than 30 minutes into this, and everything is pretty much assembled except for the structure, which will actually go together pretty quickly too. I think you could probably do this clock, as far as the assembly goes, in maybe an hour or so. Give yourself probably about 20 minutes or so to get everything cut. All right, but anyway, let's close this up by putting glue on these tabs. And this is gonna be our bottom. So we don't have to get too crazy about being perfect, but we're gonna practice on this piece and build some confidence so that when we get to assembling the structure, we're gonna do it without the slightest bit of problem. All right, so I just kind of use my finger to spread that glue out nice and thin right up to the edge. I'm gonna flare these up, and now I'm going to close this and just push down and just get everything nice and aligned. Run your finger on top and a little bit off to the side too, like at an angle, and just apply a nice pressure, not too much. You don't want to crush it as you're kind of gliding your finger along this edge here. Okay. And I think that spreading the glue out also prevents the paper from warping and looking, you know, unsightly. But that looks great. And let's take a look at that job. That is a good job there, Leo. Okay. So we can flip this over. Again, this is going to be our top because this part was already assembled. It was already together. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our little purple piece here and just glue this onto the top. And that's going to make it nice and pretty and shimmery. So let's just go real thin here. I don't want to go too thick. Get enough glue around there, and then I'm going to put a nice line around the perimeter and spread that out to the very edge so that I don't have any of it lifting up or off. I want it to be nice and tight and crisp. There we go. And lay that right on there. Make sure you get it nice and centered. There we go. And just kind of like we did when we put the top on, just run your fingers along the edges, right along the edge there, right where the two sides, or the vertical and the horizontal sides meet, right on the edge. Boy, I can really come up with a really convoluted way to say something sometimes. Okay, now take a look around, give it a spin, and see if you maybe have a little area that just didn't sit well enough for you. Just paint it with a little extra glue and then push it down. Just give it a little extra love. Okay, so we're done with this. We can start moving on to the main assembly here. Okay, so I have my base all done here. I did forget that we have to put the little accent piece on here. And I am going to actually hit the edges of this with either a black or something dark, maybe a gray ink, because this is, I believe this is a DCWV paper, and it is a white core. So I'm going to just start with a little bit of gray here and see if this covers it up, because the black might be a little too much. And that looks a lot better. That looks a lot cleaner. So what we want to do is let's get our glue on either side. I'm going to start with the long side here. And just get your glue on here. And make sure that you get a nice amount of glue right out to the very edge so that the end doesn't come apart. And lay it down so that the area here where we have the score mark, it sits nicely on that corner, and then just push that down and let that set nicely. And you see the little cute little base that we have there, or spooky, whatever you want to call it. All right, I'm gonna put that down on my table while I put glue on the rest of this. And again, making sure that I get that glue out to the very edge there. And spread that out. Okay, so let's close that up and just make sure that it's nice and aligned there. And just flatten it out, smooth it out, push it down, give it a little bit of force, and that looks nice. Okay, so let's grab our other one here, and I'm just gonna hit that with a little bit of ink, clean that up. And I'm gonna start here on this side, and that should line up perfectly. So I've actually done, or we'll have completed all 3 of the items in this bundle today. I think I started at around, I want to say I started around, I don't know, 10:30, 11 o'clock or so. Everything was already cut out, but I started about that time. I took about, I don't know, a total of about 2 hours worth, well, not 2 hours worth of breaks. I'd say maybe an hour or so worth of breaks for lunch. But I was able to get all of these done in one day of crafting, which I think is pretty darn good. It just tells you how quickly these items in this bundle go together. So I know that sometimes just picking out the paper can be a time-consuming thing, so I get it. It doesn't factor that in, but it is a pretty, all these items go together pretty quickly. Okay, so just get that nice and lined up, just push down, and that will pretty much finalize the creation of the base. And that looks really sharp, really nice. And if you need to, you can just kind of hit that edge with a little bit more ink there, especially on the side where they kind of meet. Just clean it up a little bit. All right, so there's our base. You can put that off to the side for now. And we're pretty much ready to assemble the main structure here. I'm gonna pull these pieces out from underneath my mat because I think that they're nice and ready to go. And then we can get on with putting together the structure, and then all that's really left to do is glue everything on. We're going to pop dot this thing onto the front of it. That's gonna look really cool. Yeah, well, you can see this isn't so bad. It's a pretty easy piece, actually. All right, so what we're gonna do, I'm gonna begin by just going around and folding my little tabs here at the score marks. And again, these are, in essence, what I call, and appropriately so, little skeleton pieces. They're gonna help us kind of create the bones of our clock here. And then when we have the bones all put together, we just put the face and the back on, and that's pretty much it. We'll be rocking and rolling here. So again, I'm just going through all these pieces, folding everything at the score marks, getting all these teeth ready to go. Okay, and this is probably the most tedious, repetitive part, but it also is the most crucial part to get right. But it's not hard because, again, we've got the little, what I call the little skeleton to help us shape the clock, and it's going to make it a lot easier. So you'll see, and also you'll notice if you take a look, your machine will have cut a little T, okay, in one of the tabs, and that is your top, and that is a good way to remember where to put everything. Okay, so let's do this first. Also have 2 rectangles, and you'll notice that this rectangle is going to go on top like that, and this one is going to go on the bottom like this. So we are going to get this glued into place first, okay? And that's gonna kind of bring everything somewhat together initially and make the rest of the process easier. So let's get some glue on this tab here. And then let's get some glue right out to the very edge. And spread that out. And I like to kind of do it like this. I'm gonna align it like this so that it matches up nicely. Like that, try to get it as precise as possible and then push that tab over and spread it out and fold it over this way and then give it another push on this side just to kind of flatten that tab out even more. Okay, so there we go. And this is the back of our clock that I just adhered to the base. And now I'm going to take and get this side glued down as well. And then we're going to glue the other sides in place as well. So it'll kind of be like the clock is all connected at the base, just not joined together on the sides. That's what we're doing in essence. And there's mosquitoes in here trying to suck my blood. And how fitting is that? Maybe it's Dracula in the form of a mosquito. I guess they both feed on blood, huh? Okay, so again, let's just get that lined up as precisely as possible, like that. And push that tab over, press it down. Okay, I'm gonna fold this over this way and then push down on this side here as well. That looks nice and lined up. And again, if you get a little bit of glue on either of these, well, we're gonna be putting glue on it actually. Don't fret because that's gonna be covered up. So now let's get these pieces in place. And again, there's one section labeled T, and that's for top. Make sure that we're not gluing the T to the base here, okay? All right, so I'm gonna rotate this, and again, make sure that the T is not here. The T needs to be on this side. And just like we did, we're gonna take this and glue it to the base. Nice little fine line at the bottom there. Okay. Line that up. And it should actually kind of join and fit like a little puzzle with the rest of the tabs, as you can see there, as it did. Okay, so give that a push. Let it get its initial hold. Fold it over this way and make sure that it's nice and lined up here, and it is. I'm gonna give it a nice little push here. So that's the bottom of our clock. Okay, so you see how that fits. It literally is flush right there. And that just indicates that we're doing it right. Okay, again, take a look for the letter T. Make sure that is just not, that the T is not being glued here. This is the opposite side. Get some glue on that tab. And get a nice thin line right out to the bottom. And let's get that nice and aligned. Pardon my head for just a moment. And just push that into place. Give it a push. I'll fold this over this way. And make sure that that is nice and aligned. Let me get these tabs out of here so I can push this down. There we go. Okay. All right, mostly there. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna begin by gluing these tabs here to the face of this here. Okay, so it's gonna go like this. I'm gonna glue it like this, okay? And I think the best thing to do is probably start at the bottom, and I'm going to leave this on my table like this. I can fold this out of the way for now. It'll kind of help keep it upright. All right, so the tabs are gonna get tucked underneath, and we're gonna do our best to get everything nice and aligned. I'm not putting glue on yet. I'm just kind of testing this out to get the shape figured out. and then see how it joins up at the top, and that is actually perfect. Okay, so this is gonna go quick, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put little dots. I'm gonna do like maybe 5 at a time to start. Okay, so you see the 5 little dots of glue there. Tuck them underneath all the way, and as I'm pushing in, I'm using this hand to push this up against my little skeleton piece. I'm pushing down with this finger to get these two to bond. Okay. Here we go. And I'm pretty sure that it's ready to go. I'm just giving it an extra squeeze because, yeah, see? So those should be right flush up against my little skeleton piece. I'm gonna flip this over like this, and I'm gonna flip these tabs up like that. And I'm gonna add just a little dot of glue on each of these little teeth. I think you can see that. I hope you can see that. Yeah, good. Okay, let's put it back down on our surface. Move this guy out of the way. And again, I'm taking this hand and pushing up against the little skeleton as I'm pushing down with my finger here to get that to stick. This is gonna go together quick, guys. I promise you. You have to do this like 4 times because there's each side and then the back. But that's fine, it's not that hard. So let's flip this back over, get our next set of tabs ready. And dot, 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 dot. And don't do too much glue. You don't need that much. If you put more on there, you're just wasting time because you have to sit there and wait for it to dry. And all you need is a tiny little bit. Okay, again, pushing with one hand so that it's flush up against that wall, and then I'm pushing down with this finger to get that to stick. You'll notice that I didn't even do any training with any of these pieces because the curve is so subtle and the piece is so large that we don't even need to do that. Okay, I think we can wrap up this side here and just do the rest of these tabs. So I'm going dot, 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 dot. Okay, tuck those tabs under. Let me move this out of the way. Tuck them under, follow the curve, push in up against that wall from this side here. I'm pushing in while I'm pushing down with my finger here, just applying pressure right on there. Just make sure it's nice and tight. Okay. And there we go. Let's take a look at that. That came out nice, and it is perfect, actually. It came out nice. Okay, good. So half of it is done. Now, I do want to mention something here. We've included this little template. Okay, so depending on, and what we can do actually right now is do a test here. Just want to show you something. Okay, so depending on the clock mechanism you have, depending on where you got it, so on and so forth, you may or may not have to increase the thickness of the inside to get this to kind of just stick on there naturally. Now, I'm not gluing anything yet. I'm just doing a little simple test here. I'm going to grab this layer here and this layer here. I'm going to put this on the front just temporarily. I'm not actually gluing anything. Okay, so you see that, how that, you can see right through there. And the idea is that once we actually glue this in, this is going to poke through here. And as long as it works, as long as you can actually take this, and as long as it sticks, you probably don't even need to use this template, okay? The template is to ensure that you have enough thickness for this to actually, pop through and sit there. And then also, it may help with the stability of the piece, make it a little more rigid. So what I might do, just to kind of thicken it up a little bit, and this is a good time to do it, you can actually take this and put it on like a really I don't know, what is it called? Chipboard, and you can use this to kind of manually cut around the chipboard, or if you have a Cricut Maker, you can have it cut your chipboard. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this piece inside here just to kind of add a little bit of stability to this piece. And again, you can do this with chipboard and make it really rigid. I don't think it's going to need it, but again, this thing kind of serves two purposes, and it's very likely that you can get away with not using it at all. But if you want to add just a little bit of stability to it, I would just add just one more layer on the inside. Because remember, there's going to be another layer out on the front, and then the clock face, that is a nice thick layer. So I don't think you're going to need it, but if you want, you can add this in here, and if you even want to take it a step further, you can do it with chipboard or whatever you want to use. All right, so what we're doing now is we're going to connect the other side. We're going to take these tabs and glue them to the front, just like we did here on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and swing this open, and I'm going to begin by just putting dots on the tabs. Okay, and again, you're going to tuck them under like that, and then again, make sure that you're pushing from the outside in to get that nice curve there. If you need to, grab a dowel and use a dowel to help you with the push, and then push down from the inside to get that glue to stick. Okay, and just follow that natural, beautiful curve of this clock. Okay, I think, pretty sure I got it. And let's take a look at the result there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I got one little tab here that needs a little extra love, so I will just apply that now and just press and hold that one piece by hand. Okay, but you can see how it's starting to turn out, and the rest of it is going to go pretty smooth for us, I think. All right, so let's get glue on the next few tabs here. I'm going to go probably just 5 at a time. Okay, let's tuck those. I'm going to spin it this way so you can see it better. I'm going to tuck those under. So those are going to go underneath here. And again, I'm just pushing up against this wall with my hand. I can use a dowel too if you want. And then pushing down with this finger here to get that to stick. And just try to get it up against that wall as precisely as you possibly can. Okay, there we go. Let's take a look at that. That looks good. So let's flare some more of these tabs open. And dot, 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 dot. Tuck them under. And again, just pushing this way, applying force this way, right at the base, right at the bottom of it. You don't want to push up here, you want to push right up where that corner is. And then I'm pushing down from the inside to get that glue to really stick. You could probably use a dowel in here too, once you get that initial position. Okay, let's flip that over. And let's just close this guy up. There's just a few more tabs here. I think I can probably get the rest of this in place here. Okay, so let's tuck those tabs under. I'm just kind of using my table to push them under, or push them flat. Okay, and then just tuck them under. Hold this top section up against there nice and tight while you work the rest of it. See that there? There we go. And hold that in place. That's probably the most important part right there, that where it terminates. because it wants to kind of pull away. So hold that for a few extra seconds. Okay. And there we go. Did I get that? I got it. Good. All right, let's take a look at the result here. I've got one tab that, while I was trying so hard to get that top one to stick, that one there didn't. That's okay. You can always go back in and just clean it up. Okay, so now that we've got that one side all put together, we're just going to take and glue the other side together as well. And the cool thing is we got a hole here, and we can stick our hand in there to help with a little bit of leverage that we're going to need to get that all to stick. Okay, so let's flip these tabs up a little bit because we got to get this inside here, like that. Okay, and we're going to lift this up. And we got to glue these tabs, and you can kind of stick your hand under here if you need to. And we're going to glue those tabs down like so. Okay, so I'm just going to pick a side, any side, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go here, and I'm going dot, 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 dot. And you know, it helps if you, all right, so I may not be able to demonstrate this very well because I can't put a camera underneath, but I'm folding these tabs over, and what we're doing is we're gluing them to the outside, just like we did on the other side. Okay, but I am going to flip this over and use my table to kind of help me ensure that I'm pushing down from the inside while applying that pressure from the outside. Okay, 1 second. There we go. I may need to reapply my glue. All I'm doing with my hand inside there is just pushing down to get the little skeleton piece to adhere to those little tabs that I just put glue on. Okay, and I'm also pushing this up against the little skeleton piece, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. There. Okay, so I got those three. That first one just didn't really stick very well, but it'll get a little bit easier as we get closer to this opening here. Okay, so don't worry about it. You don't really need to see it. You're kind of just doing this blind, and that's totally fine because you can do it. As long as you understood what we did up here, you can do this up here too. All right, so make sure that the tabs are on the outside here, and let's get some glue on the next little batch here. Let's do, I think we can handle 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's the next 5 tabs, just fold them over, and let's this way is probably the best way. Put them down on the table, and you can feel as I'm pushing here when there's resistance, and that's when you know you've got it up against that little skeleton piece, and then you just push down with your finger inside to get those tabs to stick. It's a pretty weird shape, but it's not hard at all. We're in essence doing the same thing we did on this side, except we can't see what we're doing because that side's on there. But that's not a problem because we're awesome and remembered how to do it. And there you go, you can see what that end result looks like. Okay, so next set of tabs here, dot, 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 dot. So I did 5. I'm gonna fold those in. I'm gonna put them down on my table. And again, I'm pushing here up against the little skeleton piece while with my finger in here inside the clock, I'm pushing down to push those tabs up against the little skeleton piece. Okay, and don't worry if you get glue all over the place. It doesn't really matter because this is all going to be covered up in just a moment. Okay, let's see how that worked. What did I do? Oh no, that worked. It's just one of them didn't really hold very well. It's okay though. We can fix that one. There we go. So it actually, I think it's good that I made a little, I didn't have a boo-boo, it's just the glue didn't stick. But you see what I'm doing. I'm deciding that to make this easier, I'm using my table to push down on, because I don't want to warp this thing. We could technically, if we wanted to, we could put a drop of glue on this tab here, and then just do this. Okay, so if you want to do it that way, if you're not comfortable with the way I've been doing it, you can do like 1 or 2 at a time, and just do it like this so you can see what you're doing. That's up to you. And I'll just do a few like that to show you that there's more than one way to do it. Okay, so you get the idea here. But instead of just doing 1 at a time, I'm just flaring these out and putting glue on a few of them, and then just tucking them under like that. And I'm using my table to kind of push down or push up. I'm using this hand to push this wall up against the little skeleton guy, so you can do more than 1 at a time. I think it just makes the whole process go a little bit quicker. And this thing's actually kind of shaped like a coffin now that I think about it. And you know what, with these last 2 here, I mean, we could just do these manually, because there's only 2 left. So let's just put glue on that one and fold that tab over onto the top of this. Just make sure that it's right up along the edge there, so it's butting up against this little skeleton piece. Okay, and then just give it a good squeeze so it sticks. And then let's wrap it up with this last piece right up at the top. Make sure that it curves over nicely. Perfect. And it should meet up exactly like that. Okay. All right, so one side's done. You just need to repeat that same thing on this side. And again, if you want, you can totally do it this way. But yeah, and actually, you know what? I think maybe for the bottom 3, I may just do it this way. I think that might be a little more precise. Well, so see, yeah, I mean, either way works. I think it's just a lot easier to use the table because it's flat, but I think either way will work. Yeah, see what I'm saying? It kind of, it's hard to push up on it like that. All right, so I'm going to go back down here, especially, I'm going to go back to my original method where I put the glue on, folded the tabs over, and then kind of just used my table. And it might be easier if I use this hand. Use my table to help me push these tabs into place. Okay, so I'm using this hand to push this wall up against that little skeleton piece, while with my pointer finger inside this one, I'm pushing down to apply pressure to those tabs. And again, you'll see what I mean after they dry. I'll show you the front of it. I think I'm possibly over-explaining this right now, but I would rather do that than just have you guess what I'm doing. So you can see these 3 tabs are now glued into place. I just did it by using my table as kind of a force to push. Okay, so I'm doing 4 here. I've got glue on the next 4 tabs, and I'm going to fold them over. You can see by where the glue's going, where they're going to be connected to the face of this. And again, you could, now see that's still a little too far for me. So I'm going to stick my hand in there, and I'm going to push up against that skeleton piece so that I can get that right curve. And I'm pushing down from the inside to get those tabs to grip that little skeleton piece. There we go. That looks good. Bam. All right, now we've got to make sure that our tabs are outside like that. Okay. All right, now, if you want, I think you could probably get your hand in here and squeeze between your 2 fingers if you want to do it this way now. That should now work. Like that. It's up to you. You can still use the table method if you want, but you don't have to. and dot, dot, dot. And just make sure that this piece here is butting up against the shape of this piece. That's very important, obviously. I want to make sure that we get the right shape. All right, going next 3 here. And I mean, we will literally be wrapping this up here in just a moment. There's not much left to do. This was probably the most challenging part of this project, but even so, it's not that hard because we have the little skeleton piece to help you with the shape. It's just a matter of gluing the tabs around the shape, and that's not all that bad, especially considering what you can do with paper and how we engineer everything. This is kind of just fun. It's very meditative. If you can find a reason to feel any stress outside of or any life stress while you're doing this, then you're not doing something right, because this should really kind of get your left and right brains engaged and focused away from the silly things that cause that cortisol to run rampant in our systems and cause disease and all these problems that we have. So I think the more you craft and the more you get involved in art, the healthier you're going to be. So just enjoy the process. Figure out the best way of doing something, because the way I do it, I recommend it, but hey, you know what? Maybe you have a better idea, and I'm all for it. All right, so there it is. Okay, front and the back are all together, and here is our top. So we're going to put our top in place now in just a moment here. Okay, and this is our front, obviously. So why don't we do that real quick? Let's close this up. The clock mechanism, we should be able to get it through the back, no problem, so we don't need to worry about that. So yeah, let's go ahead and close this up. This is going to be our front, so let's start there. Let's get our glue on this tab here, and just a little bit out to the very edge. Okay, let's close it. It's going to keep this thing nice and rigid for us when we put the rest of the pieces on. So with the tab that is on the face of the clock, just get that nice and lined up. Make sure that you got it set right, oriented correctly. Okay, get that nice and lined up. And you can put that down on your table and push down there. Make sure you get it all the way out to the edge there. Okay, there we go. Got a little bit seeped through, but that's fine, because remember, we still got to put this on the front. So that's going to cover that up anyway. Okay, so now what we want to do is we're going to put glue on the remaining 3 tabs here. Okay, let's get that glue on there. And then again, I'm going to do a nice thin line right up to the edge. I gotta clean my nozzle off. There's a little friction there. Okay, now I'm gonna spread that out to the very edge. Sorry if it's a little blurry there. I'm probably gonna need to go in and paint that. I don't think I got enough glue on there. Okay, so now you can just go ahead and close that up. Make sure that you get it nice and lined up and aligned correctly. And just kind of squeeze it between your fingers. All right, so that looks great. Okay, so with all that in place, you can go ahead and glue our face on here. Okay, and that should align beautifully with the body of the clock that we just created. And it's going to go on just like that. So let's do that. Let's get our glue on this piece here. Let me clean off my tip here. Okay, and don't glob it on. We don't want the paper to warp. I'm kind of doing this curly Q thing here, and then I am also going to work this glue out to the very edges as well. And I'll probably end up spreading that with my finger because I want it to get out to the very, very edge. And you could technically put it on there if you want. It's up to you. I think that because of the tabs, it might be easier to just do it on this piece. It's a lot smoother when it comes to kind of smoothing it out. There we go. Just kind of paint that down. Okay, and of course, let's get some glue in the center. And if we have to, again, we can always go back in and paint this with a little bit of extra glue. So again, just make sure you get it lined up with the little hole, obviously, and that it's nice and flush with the bottom, and that it hugs the beautiful shape that we created. Just like that. Try to apply a nice even pressure all the way around. It's going to be, might be a little tough to get everything to sit nice and flush in one fell swoop because there's so much area to cover, which is why we may need to go in and kind of paint this a little bit, but that's okay. Not a problem. I do see one area where mine didn't sit as perfectly as I would have hoped, but this side it did pretty well on. Okay, so that should be nice and flush there. If you have any bits of excess glue, you can try to rub those off. Okay, so as I mentioned, I have a little bit of area where it maybe didn't grip as well as I had hoped. But again, it's not a problem. I'm going to take just a scrap piece of paper and throw a little bit of glue on one little corner. Just tuck it right in there and paint a little bit of glue onto the face of the clock here. And then just give that little area a little extra love. Just right there, bam. And there it is, perfect seam. And then work your way around and check out if you have any more little areas that maybe need a little extra love. And just paint a little bit of glue. That looks pretty good, okay? Now, you really need to do the same thing with the back, okay? But before we do that, we can glue this on, because we gotta do it right, obviously. So get a glue on the back of this, and this is where you want to make sure that you have your 12 up at the top, okay? 12 is the X and the two eyes. You want that nice and centered, right up at the facing up. Hopefully you can see that. Yeah, you got it. And just make sure it's nice and aligned with that hole, and that it's nice and centered. You can use the star as a reference as well, obviously. Okay, so just want to put the back on this now. Okay, so again, the back should fit on nicely, just like we did the front. Okay, so let's get our glue. We don't want to put any glue on the actual door. Let's just move that out of the way so we don't accidentally do that or even think about doing it. Let me wipe this off real quick. Okay, so we'll just throw the back on here. And then, we're pretty much ready to put our bat into place and put our little mechanism in place. Now, again, I'm working that glue out to the very edge, and it might help to make it a little thicker than usual, but definitely spread it out. You can use your finger if you don't want to use your finger. You can use my little tool that I use to spread things out with, so you don't have to get it on your fingers. That's fine. Whatever works for you. We just don't want it seeping out, but we also want to make sure that we get it nice and connected on there. Is it leaking out a little bit? It is. Clean that up, no problem. Okay. And just Just get that lined up nicely. Use the bottom as an initial reference for where we're gluing it, because it should match up perfectly. It's nice and straight there at the bottom. And then use your fingers to kind of feel the curves. Run your fingers along the curve there. And there we go. And again, if everything doesn't stick initially, we can always go back in and just paint a little extra glue in those areas where it might be lifting up a little bit. And that's fine. Don't feel like you should be able to get it all in one shot. You know, your hands are only so big that you know, how are you supposed to do that with unless you have, like, you know, baseball glove hands or something, which I know I don't. I'm gonna grab another little scrap piece of paper here, and I'm gonna do a little bit more of my touch-up painting here with the glue in some of these areas where I feel that I could have gotten better contact. There we go. And then just push that down and hold it down until it's nice and tight. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's still gonna look perfect. It is paper, it's malleable. If this was wood, you know, I mean, we could probably do a much better job, but it's still gonna look awesome. It's still gonna look perfect, I think. There we go. All right, so again, if you need to, just go around and find any little areas that you think you may need to clean up. I already just found a couple, and then maybe I'm not too worried about that. That looks great, actually. Okay, so now there's a couple more little things here. Our sides here, what we're gonna do is we have these little panels, and these panels are gonna go right on the side here, and they are going to leave a nice little border on all sides here. So what we wanna do is you can kind of take this and train it up here and then down here, just to kind of give it a natural start for where we want it to sit. Okay, like that. And then we're gonna put glue on the back of this and glue it down to the side. So let's start at the bottom here. And I think I'm just gonna do like a third of this right now and make sure that that sticks before I work my way up even further. And I'm gonna get glue right out to the very base here. And there's no glue up at the top, so I can kind of practice with how I want the border to look. That's perfect, right there, just like that. Try to get it nice and centered and aligned. And I'm just holding down like the bottom third here, especially the base right here. Okay, give that a few seconds to dry, like that. And then you can peel this back and get your glue on the rest of this. I think this is probably the best way to do it, because I feel like it's kind of hard to get the whole thing in one shot while making sure that it's nice and flat and flush throughout. Then of course, make sure you get that glue right out to the very edge there at the top. Okay, and then just make sure it's hugging the clock as you're making your way up, and then just terminate it right at the top. Got a little bit of glue there. And it's off now. And just hold that. It looks nice, and it's not lifting up in any spot. It's nice and flush with the entire piece. Okay, so just going to do that again on the other side. So go ahead and do that, and then I will meet you back here, and we'll go ahead and work on our little bat and get him in place, and then put our little mechanism in here as well. Okay, so this thing is super sturdy right now. Okay, so next up, let's get our little bat in position here, and we're gonna pop dot that part onto the main part here. And I'm using black little foam squares. Probably 2 should do, and then that way you don't have anything peeking out. So just place that right over its corresponding little area there. It's going to give us some nice depth to our little bat. Okay, and then what we're going to do, okay, now we're going to place our bat onto the actual clock. So it's up to you at this point. If you want, what you can do is you can glue this down, or if you want to give it a little extra dimension, you can raise it with some pop dots. I think we're going to do the pop dot method, and if for some reason that doesn't withstand the test of time here, then we'll eventually just glue it down. But his little butt, or whatever that thing is going to sit pretty much right on top of the 12 on the clock. Okay, and then take a look here at the other areas where we have some overlap, and that is pretty much where we're going to need to put little zots or pop dots if we want him to stick there. So let me flip him over, and I'm going to put a nice big foam square right on his little butt there. Okay, let me just play with this one more time here. See if that looks right. Yep, and that's hidden, so that works nicely. And then I think I'm just gonna do them on the tips here, in these little areas. I have some half foam squares that I'm gonna use right there. I think that should do it. Let me grab, I need one more here. Let me find my scissor. Cut that in half. There we go. Get that right in there. Okay, and just peel that back. And it's black too, so that really helps hide anything that you don't want to be seen. Okay, and again, just make sure that his butt is sitting right above the 12 and that you have it equidistant. These little tips here, watch these little tips and just make sure they're equidistant from the actual clock. Okay, and then once it is, come on, don't stick yet. Let's see how we're looking here. Yeah, I'm gonna say that that's it right there. Okay, and let's see if, and actually, you know what? And I have none of the zots showing through on the side here, so that's perfect. Got a nice clock face. Wow, okay. I think it's pretty much time to put our little mechanism in place, so let's do that. So if you have this one, just make sure that you put the little rubber thing, oops, yeah, that's right. Put the rubber thing on there. That's gonna kind of increase the thickness a little bit. Just poke it right through. All the way, there we go. Okay, you don't even need to like glue it or anything, because we have a little nut that we just screw on here. There is a washer that comes with it, and I'm not going to use it because it kind of hides the little silver piece, or the little copper piece that we have there, and I want to keep that. Okay, so the reason I had to go get the hands was because I actually spray painted them a nice matte black color. So the way that this works is, and I'm going to make sure that this nut is nice and tight here. Okay, the hour hand is going to go on first, just like that. And I actually have one of my older clocks here. And then the minute hand is going to go on next. And the minute hand kind of just slips over. It's almost like there's a perfectly shaped little piece in there for the minute hand. Just make sure you get that in the right spot. Okay, and then you literally just cap it off with the second hand to close everything up and put a nice finish on it. I'm going to hold this while I push this down. And there it is. Okay. Actually, that is not correct. There's one more little gear that we need to. There's a little gear here that we're going to put on over that. I guess that's to hold these guys together. And then you put the second hand on. Okay, so that's pretty much it for that. Let me grab a battery out of this one and put it in this one so we can actually see it tick. That would be fun, wouldn't it? Okay, so our battery is in, our clock is ticking, and all that's left to do now is just mount this to our base, like so. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put glue on the bottom of this, and it's nice that there's some weight in there now, especially with the battery, because that's going to make it easier for this thing to sit properly. So I'm just going to cake on the glue, kind of. And I'm also going to make sure that I get that glue right out to the very edge. I don't want it to look like it's not a part of the base. I want it to look all seamless. So I'm going to take that and just spread it out nicely right up to the edge. And I got a little bit too much there. So I'm just literally just painting that glue. Okay, and then just take your clock and just get it nice and centered. Should be a nice even border on the front and back, and then also on the sides. Should sit pretty even there. And just hold that in place while it sets and dries. And that is pretty much it. There is our really cool clock. But probably never had a clock for Halloween, but now you do. And I know this one for sure is going to be part of my decor because it's one of those unique little pieces. And I think one of the reasons that we wanted to do one of these is because there's a whole movement of people that repurpose old clocks. I think it's like Halloween folk art or something like that. And the papers in this really simulate that entire look. If you Google it, you'll see what I mean. There's like a Halloween folk art sort of thing where these artists do magnificent things, repurposing old items and turning them into works of Halloween art. And that, I think, is what we tried to accomplish with this piece, and I think we did a really good job. So kudos to the Dreaming Tree team, and kudos to you. I'm sure yours came out just as nice, and I can't wait to see it. So if you do make it, make sure that you post a photo into the Dreaming Tree group on Facebook. Just head over to Facebook and type in Dreaming Tree group in the search and join myself and 7,000 other dreamers and inspire us, because we'll surely inspire you, and the more the merrier. Also, if you did enjoy crafting with me today, please take a moment to visit our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. It lets me know that I'm doing a good job and that you love crafting with me. So thank you for spending the time with me today, and I look forward to crafting with you again.
Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.